नहमदुहु व नुसल्ली अला रसूलिहिल करीम अम्मा बाद फ़ऊज़ु बिल्लाहि मिनश शैतानिर रजीम बिस्मिल्लाहिर रहमानिर रहीम अस्सलामु अलैकुम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू. We are going to start our fifth lecture about the life of the Holy Prophet. And in this lecture we are going to start with the birth of the Holy Prophet. The Holy Prophet was from the family of Bani Hashim, and from that it was Bani Muttalib. And so he was born on the 9th of Rabiul Awwal in the year 571. There are some people who believe that the Holy Prophet was born on 12th of Rabiul Awwal, but when we go a little bit further into history, we realize that the Holy Prophet immigrated to Medina on 12th of Rabiul Awwal. The Holy Prophet also died on 12th Rabiul Awwal, but his birth happened on the 9th of Rabiul Awwal. The Holy Prophet's mother, Bibi Amna, says that the day the Holy Prophet was born, she had a dream. And in her dream, she saw that a light came out of her body and illuminated the palaces of Syria. So this was a good sign of what was going to come. Some people say that the domes that were on top of the palace of Kisra, which is the Arabic word for Khusro, the emperor of Iran, they fell down at the birth of Holy Prophet, and the temple of the fire worshippers, which had a fire burning for thousands of years, also got extinguished at his birth. When the Holy Prophet was born, the Holy Prophet's mother, Bibi Amna, sent a message to her father-in-law, Abdul Muttalib, and Abdul Muttalib was very happy. He came, he picked up the Holy Prophet, he took him to the Kaaba, and he made a prayer for him, and there he named him Muhammad. And this name Muhammad was Muhammad was not a common name in Arabia. It was not a known name, and some historians say that this name has actually never been used prior to our Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he's named by his paternal grandfather who prayed for him, and according to the Arabian tradition at the time, he was circumcised on the 7th day. So it was very, very common. It was very, very common for children who were born in the city, and Mecca was a city, to be allotted to nannies outside the city for breastfeeding. And so such a search ensued for an appropriate nanny who would breastfeed the child until 2 years of age, when the child was ready to eat solids. However, when the Prophet was born, he was first breastfed by a lady called Thobia, and Thobia was the servant girl of his uncle Abu Lahab, and so he was breastfed initially by that lady. Earlier, this particular lady, who was the servant girl of Abu Lahab, had also breastfed Hamza radiallahu, who is a chacha, who is an uncle of the Holy Prophet, and so he kind of became a brother by lactation of Hamza radiallahu through this relationship with Thobia. Thobia had also breastfed Abu Salama and Masruh, and so the Prophet also developed this relationship. Now I say this about this relationship relate to the lactation mother, the mother who breastfeeds them rather than the biological mother, because in the absence of a government, I explained this in earlier lectures, in the absence of a government and the absence of a formal system of law enforcement, blood relations, and these relations by stage of lactation, by receiving milk from the same person or being breastfed by the same mother, these relationships became very important, because this is how people developed tribes, and this is how they formed affiliations in the future, and this is how they found protection in the absence of governments and law enforcement. So when early on in his a few days after his birth, the tribe of several women who lived in the suburb or the rural areas come into Makkah to get children who had been born. And so they are all looking for a child that they would take care of, they would breastfeed for 2 years, and as a result of that, they would get remunerated, they would get financially compensated. And so the women of Bani Sa'd tribe and some other women also traveled to Mecca. And one of them is Halima Sa'diya, radiallahu. So Halima Sa'diya also travels. She has her husband Harith with her, and she also has her little child who is also an infant at the time, whose name is Abdullah. So Halima Sa'diya comes with a caravan of potential nannies who are coming to Mecca to receive children from affluent people, so they could take these children back They would breastfeed them. They would teach them the pure Arabic that's spoken by the tribes in the rural areas. And then at 2 years, they would return the child. So Halima Sadiya says in her own story that she was on a very old and feeble donkey. They had one old camel that they were bringing with them, and her husband Haris was with her, and she was in a caravan of people. And all of the people in the caravan were very, very unhappy with Halima because her donkey, her white donkey, female donkey, was very feeble, and it would lag behind in the back of the caravan. Halima Sadiya also had other children. So she had this son we called Abdullah, who was a few days or a few weeks older than the Holy Prophet. She also had another child whose name was Shayma. She's called Shayma, but her name was Hazafa, and she would carry the Holy Prophet around sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he was a child as well. And she had another daughter as well, whose name is Anisa. So one thing I also want to establish is that when this caravan came to Mecca, every potential nanny was presented the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the Holy Prophet was requested by each one of the potential nannies to take back for being breastfed. But because he was an orphan, because his father was not alive, none of the nannies wanted to accept the Holy Prophet. None of these women, or what we call kind of the lactating mothers, wanted to accept the Holy Prophet. So in the end, there was only one child left to be taken, and Halima Sadiya radiallahu was the only nanny who was left without a child. So she says to her husband, do you think we should go get this child? Maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give us some blessing from this child. Her husband agrees. They go back, they pick up the child, and then they see a bunch of miracles after that. I also want to mention that when Halima Sadiya took the Holy Prophet back eventually and started breastfeeding him, one day when she was taking a break, another lady breastfed the Holy Prophet, who had also breastfed Hamza radiallahu when he was a child. So Hamza radiallahu became the lactation brother of the Holy Prophet by two means. One by the lady who was in the town of Bani Sa'd when Halima was on break, and one by the relationship with Thobia, who was the servant of Abu Lahab, his uncle. So Halima Sadiya narrates that as soon as he took the Holy Prophet, basically we saw some amazing things that happened to us. Some blessings came upon us. That night after we picked up the child, and all the other ladies had also, nannies had also picked up a child, and they came back to the camp where they had set up their tents, they found some amazing happenings. So let me tell you some of those things. Halima Sadiya says that we had the old feeble donkey, we had an old camel, and I myself did not lactate enough, did not produce enough milk to feed my own child Abdullah at the time. But as soon as we came back to our camp that night, I felt that my breasts were filled with milk. The child, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, drank my milk till he was filled, fell asleep. Then I fed my child Abdullah. He drank milk until he was filled. And then we had nothing to eat. So my husband went to look at the camel who had never produced milk before, and he found that the camel's udders were filled with milk. So he milked the camel, and I drank milk until I was filled, and then my husband Haris drank milk until he was filled. So see, but these were some of the blessings that they saw when they took the Holy Prophet, not back to their town in Bani Sa'd, in the rural areas, but right where they were in their camp in Makkah. So as they are returning back with the caravan back to the tribe of Bani Sa'd, this feeble female donkey who has been lagging behind in the caravan turns around and runs all across the entire caravan and starts running in front. So the other females, the other nannies who also have children and are heading back to town, call out to Halima and they say, "What's happened with your donkey that it is running so fast? Is it the same donkey that you came on?" So these were some of the earlier blessings that the family of Halima Sadiya and Haris saw because of the Holy Prophet. So they bring the child back to their house, the child which is the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they say that there is an extreme drought in the region. It hadn't rained for years, and there was not enough fodder for the cattle, there was enough grass for the animals, there was no vegetables or plants or fruit growing, and they were in a state of difficulty. But she says that when she came back, And she would, the cattle herders would take her goats out. Her goats would come back on a full stomach every day, and their udders would be full of milk, and they would milk the goats every night. To the point where other people in the tribe of Bani Sa'd saying to their cattle herders, to their goat herders, make sure that you follow the herd of Halima Sa'diya, because her goats always come back with a full stomach and with full udders. So at the age of 2 years, Halima Sa'diya stops breastfeeding the child, the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then she takes the child back to his mother, Bibi Amna, and she presents the child to the mother, but she has already seen some incredible blessings that her family has enjoyed as a result of this child's presence. So she says to Bibi Amna that I'm afraid for the epidemic that is going around in Mecca, and I'm also afraid for the diseases that are in Mecca. And so the rural air is much better, it's much cleaner, it's out of the city, and the Arabic that is taught is also better. And so she is able to convince Bibi Amna to let her take the child back. So Bibi Amna allows Halima Sa'diya radiallahu to take the child back with her. And so Halima Sa'diya brings the child back, and the child starts getting raised again in the tribe of Bani Sa'd. When the child is about 4 or 5 years old, there is an incident of the Shaqq Sadr, so the chest opening of the Holy Prophet. So Sadr means basically the prime spot, and in Arabic it usually refers to the chest, occasionally it refers to the heart. So the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is playing outside in the street, outside the house of Halima Sa'diya with the kids of Bani Sa'd. When Jibreel alayhi salam comes to him, he lays the Prophet down, he opens his chest. From the chest, he removes his heart. From the heart, he removes a small piece. And then he washes the heart in Zamzam. He puts the heart back. He seals the chest back, and he says, that portion I have removed is the portion of shaitan from you. So the children, who are watching this, as they are playing, they run into the house and they say to Halima Sa'diya, your child was killed, your child was killed. Halima Sa'diya runs out. She sees the Prophet's fine, but he is in fact looking pale. So she picks up the child, and because of this, she fears for the child's safety and decides to take the child back to his mother. So at about between 4 and 5 years old, she takes the Holy Prophet back to his mother, Bibi Amna, who then starts taking care of the child. So Bibi Amna takes care of the child until the child is about 6 years old, and then she decides to take a trip to Medina to visit the grave of her deceased husband. So she takes her servant Ayman radiallahu, and she takes her father-in-law Abdul Muttalib, and she takes her child, the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they travel to Medina. She stays in Medina for a month, which is also where her family originated from at some point. And then she is returning back, and on the way back, she is at the town of pbuh, and she falls sick, and she passes away. So Abdul Muttalib now becomes the custodian of the child, and he brings the child back, and he takes care of this child until the child is 8 years and a couple of months and some days old. And so Abdul Muttalib gives extreme love, attention, respect to this child. He's extremely passionate about this child and loves him more than his own children. And because of his guardianship, he has very close proximity to this child. It is said that because Abdul Muttalib was the leader of Quraysh, he was kind of the ruler of that town, or the most honorable person and the most powerful person, and also caretaker of the Kaaba, they would lay out a sort of an area for him to conduct his meetings, and it would be under the wall of the shade of the Kaaba. So in the shade of the Kaaba's wall, they would set out a carpet from him. He would sit there, and he would give instructions to his sons on what to do. And as you can remember, he had many sons. He has 10 sons. But the sons would not sit on this carpet. They would sit on the floor as a respect to Abdul Muttalib. But the Holy Prophet would go and sit next to Abdul Muttalib, and his uncles would go try to remove him from the carpet. And Abdul Muttalib would say, no, leave my child alone. This child is different, he is unique, and he is very special to me. So he became the object of his grandfather's attention until the child is 8 years and a couple of months, and says 8 years, 2 months and 10 days. And Abdul Muttalib dies. But before Abdul Muttalib dies, he goes to the Prophet's uncle Abu Talib and he asks him to accept guardianship of the Holy Prophet. And Abu Talib accepts the guardianship of Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And for over 40 years, remember, Abu Talib died in the 50th year of prophethood. So the whole Abu Talib now, from this point on, when the Prophet is 8 years, 2 months and 10 days, until the Holy Prophet is almost 50, takes care of the Holy Prophet, becomes his guardian, and makes decisions upon who's going to be the friend, who's going to be the enemy, who's going to be the foe, based on the Holy Prophet's life. So he bases his own relationships on what the Holy Prophet's needs were as a person and as a prophet. So let me tell you some incidents of the Holy Prophet's life that are unique and which kind of give us an indication of what's to come in the future. There was a severe drought in Mecca one time, and now Abu Talib has inherited this leadership from Abdul Muttalib. And so the people of Mecca, the Quraysh, which are part of his family, they come to Abu Talib and they say, we are in a state of drought. Could you go and make prayer so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants us rain? So they say that Abu Talib appears with a child, and the child is holding the finger of Abu Talib, and the child's face is beautiful. It is like a sun which was just covered with clouds, and the clouds have just left. And he comes and he rests his back, the child's back, against the Kaaba, holding his finger, and the child and Abu Talib look up at the sky. And from where there were no clouds in the sky, all of these clouds suddenly come, the sky gets dark, and it rains. And it rains and it rains, and there's a torrential downpour. And so the valleys are fertilized, the valleys have water, and the grass and the fodder starts growing, so the cattle can feed, and the cattle can reproduce, and the cattle can produce milk. So this is one of the signs of the Holy Prophet's blessing to humanity very early on, even before he had received his prophethood. So Abu Talib writes a poem, and the poem says, he is beautiful. From his face we request the blessing of rain. He is the supporter of orphans, and he is the protector of widows. And this is a poem that is written by Abu Talib. So when the Holy Prophet is about 12 years old, there's another incident that Abu Talib, and as you might know, a lot of these people are traders, and they are travel traders. They trade when they travel. So Abu Talib is on his way to Syria, and he is now in Basra, which is basically a part of Syria at the time. It is one of the central cities. And they are along a mountainside. This monk, this Christian monk, comes out of his it's a place of worship, and he greets Abu Talib, and he says that this child who is with you is Sayyidul Alameen. He is the leader of the universes. And he said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to make this child Rahmatul lil Alameen, a blessing to the universes in the future, and send him for humanity. But at this time, I feel that this child might be in danger in Syria, so you should send this child back. He also lifts the shirt of the Holy Prophet and looks on his shoulder and says that this mark that he has on his shoulder is basically on his back, under his shoulder, is the mark of prophethood. And he also says that we find the mention of this Holy Prophet also in our books. So we would like, and so Abu Talib says, how do you know that this is going to be a Holy Prophet? And he says, when your caravan was approaching, I saw that all the trees and all the stones were bowing down, and they only bow down when a prophet emerges. And so this is a clear proof and a sign that this is a Holy Prophet. When the Holy Prophet was 15 years of age, the Battle of Fujjar took place, and there were 4 sacred months that the Quraysh followed, that the Arabs followed. It was Rajab, Ziqat, Zilhaj, and Muharram. And these were considered impermissible months, or haram months. So battle was not allowed in this month, and it's called Battle of Fujjar because they had violated the sanctity of haram, and they had also violated the sanctity of the forbidden months, the months that were forbidden for battle. And the Holy Prophet in this battle was on the side of Quraysh, of course, which was his family, and he would hand arrows to his uncles as they were fighting the war. Another incident from the life of the Holy Prophet is Halful Fuzul. So this is a treaty. this man from the tribe of Zubayd came into Mecca. This man from the tribe of Zubayd came to Mecca, and he sold some goods to one of the leaders of Mecca. But when the time came for the payment, this particular leader, As bin Wa'il, refused to pay for the goods. So this man went to his allies in Mecca and he said, "Can you help me get my rightful money from this leader of Quraysh?" But they all refused. So he stood up on a mountain and he recited some sad poetry. When this happened, the Holy Prophet's uncle got a group of people together and said that this is gross oppression, that we should not stand for this, and so we should see what we can do to support him. So he gets a group of people together in the house of Abdullah bin Jud'an, and so in this house they all take an oath that if somebody gets oppressed in Mecca, whether they are from Mecca or whether they are a foreigner, they would all rise and they would make sure that the person is not oppressed and his rights are restored. And this Halful Fuzul, this treaty called the Oath of Fuzul, which happened in Abdullah Jud'an's place, was very near and dear to the Holy Prophet's heart. He said later on, after he got his prophethood, that this particular oath that I took on that day of supporting the oppressed people is nearer and dearer to me, is more beloved to me than a red camel. And we know that in the country of Arabia, the red camel was a very, very valuable thing. So his uncle Zubair initiated this good action, and the Holy Prophet became a part of it. Let's talk about a little bit about the Holy Prophet's profession as he was growing up. He did not particularly have a specific assigned profession, but we know that in most occasions he was herding goats. He herded goats for the tribe of Bani Sa'd, he herded goats for the people of Mecca, and he was conducting this very, very hard work until the age of 25. At the age of 25, Khadija bint Khuwaylid asked the Holy Prophet if he would consider going on a tourney, on a trade route or a travel with her servant and sell some goods for her, and that she would give him payment, compensation or commission which was above what other people was willing to pay. So Khadija bint Khuwaylid was already impressed with the Prophet's honesty, his truthfulness, his mannerism, his kindness. And so when he comes back after conducting this trade in Syria, and he has gone with her servant called Seerah, she finds that there's an unusual amount of blessing in the trade, that it's very profitable and it's very good. And then Seerah, her servant, tells Khadija that this man is the Holy Prophet ﷺ is extremely honest. He's extremely kind. He's extremely merciful. He's very straightforward, and he's very loving and caring. So all the qualities we associate with social intelligence, emotional intelligence, and goodness and virtue are present with him. Khadija bint Khuwaylid is very, very impressed. She talks to her friend Anisa to talk to the Holy Prophet and proposes to him. The Holy Prophet then talks to his uncles. His uncles talk to Khadija's uncles, and in a couple of months after this happens, the two get married, and so the mahar is set at 20 camels. At 20 camels, and the Holy Prophet pays a mahar of 20 camels. So the children, all of the children that the Holy Prophet had, except for Ibrahim, were from Khadija, and they were Qasim, Zainab, Ruqayya, Kulthum, Fatima, Abdullah, who was also called Tayyib, and Tahir. All of the sons died early on. All of the daughters survived, but only one daughter outlived the Holy Prophet. The daughters grew up, became adults, saw the time of Islam, and were with the Holy Prophet. The only daughter of the Holy Prophet who outlived him by 6 months was Fatima radiallahu. Ibrahim was the only child who was born to Maria Qibtiyya, Mary the Coptic lady from the Roman emperor. So Khadija radiallahu, during the marriage with the Holy Prophet did not marry again. This was the time when he was in the peak of his youth. It was time when he was young, but he only had Khadija radiallahu as his wife. So when the Holy Prophet was about 35 years old, an unusual incident happened. What happened was that the Kaaba, the building of the Kaaba became very weak, it became very old, it became very shabby, and there were cracks in the walls, and then a flood came and it affected the foundations of the Kaaba. And there was a fear that the Kaaba would fall down, so the Quraysh decided to reconstruct the Kaaba. However, they also feared that if they would fall the Kaaba, if they would destroy the Kaaba to rebuild it, that they would be destroyed themselves as some kind of punishment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So eventually, they decided to build the Kaaba only with good money. So they would not accept any wages that were earned from prostitution. They would not take any interest money for this, and only money that was earned through legal means. They said that if any goods or money was usurped from somebody or taken unlawfully, that they would not accept this money. So the Quraysh now decide to construct the Kaaba, and eventually one of the Qurayshis takes the shovel or the tool and strikes the wall, and when nothing happens to him, all of the other tribes join in and they drop it down to the foundations from where Ibrahim alayhi salam and Ismail alayhi salam had built. Each tribe brings a pile of stones and rocks to build the Kaaba. And when the Kaaba was 9 hands tall, it was really kind of short of human height. And so because of that, because of in the old building, there was a treasure in it. Some people have stolen the treasure. And so the Quraysh, when they rebuilt it, they built it 15 hands high. They made the door at an elevated state, so people could not enter it unless they gave them permission. But towards the end of this construction, they ran short of money. So one of the walls became shorter, which was the wall which was near Hatim or Hijr. And so at the very end of the construction of Kaaba, it was time to now put Hijr Aswad, the black stone, back into the wall of the Kaaba. And all of the tribes disagreed as to who was allowed, whose right it was to put the stone back. And so 4 or 5 days of heavy arguing and discussion, and so swords were about to come out and wars were going to be fought, until one of the elderly wise people said that let's decide that whoever enters that door of the haram first in the morning is going to make that decision. And as luck would have it, or fate would have it, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will was implemented, the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a 35-year-old man, walks in through that door. And so another person from the Quraysh or Mecca call out and say that the Holy Prophet has walked in from this side, and so we are accepting of his decision here. So they say, هَذَا الْأَمِينَ رَضَيْنَاهُ هَذَا Muhammad. This is the trustworthy person, and we are agreeable on him, and this is Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So inside the Kaaba, so coming back to the construction, a Roman construction worker, Baqum, had been hired to build the Kaaba. They put 6 pillars inside. And so the Holy Prophet decides this dispute in the following way. He calls all the leaders of the Quraysh. He puts the stone in the middle, and when they lift it up to where it is at the appropriate height, he picks it up with his own 2 hands and he puts it. What a beautiful way to resolve a dispute that was going to result in war. And what an intelligent way to prevent a crisis, an emergency, and a disaster. So if we look at the behavior of the Holy Prophet, overall behavior, prior to him accepting prophethood, we see a person who is extremely humble, extremely kind, extremely modest, extremely sober, never indulging in any of the laghwiyat, in the frivolous behavior, in the reckless behavior, even as a teenager. The Holy Prophet says himself that when he was a teenager, he would herd goats in northern Mecca, and one day he says to the other teenager who was with him that I am going into town, and the live entertainment of that time was that people who were professional storytellers would come from other towns and they would tell stories. So that was the live entertainment of the time. And he said, why don't you watch the goats tonight, and I'm going to go and listen to one of these stories, from the overnight storytellers. And the Holy Prophet says that I started traveling to Mecca, but on the way, when I had not reached the storyteller, I heard songs of singing. I went and inquired what was happening, and they told me that there's a wedding going on in the house and people are singing with joy. I stopped to listen to the song and I fell asleep. and my ear was closed. I didn't hear any noise. I woke up with the rays of the sun on my face, and so I didn't do this. And he said this happened again. A later time, I tried this again and again. I stopped to listen to a wedding song. I fell asleep, and I woke up with the rays of the sun on my face. So if we look at the overall life of the Holy Prophet, prior to his accepting prophethood, or him being the star prophethood, he was extremely soft and kind in his behavior. He was extremely soft-spoken. He was extremely kind. He was a protector of the oppressed. And he was the most kind-hearted person. Khadija bint Qabilat radiallahu says about him that he would carry the load of the tired, he would help the people in need, he would serve the guests the best of what he had, and he would provide relief to the disaster-stricken people. And this is why we call him Rahmatul lil Alameen, a blessing to the universes. Jazakallahu khair. We end our 5th lecture here. We will continue, inshallah, with the beginning of his prophethood next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.